in terms of, the question was, thinking about what I'd said about transformation and damp, well, what about the triple heater? I mean, obviously everyone's going to put needles in. It's such a stereotype, but it's like diagnosed patient with damp, and then you see all these needles in the spleen channel. I mean, we have to move qi, and then things will do their job. The spleen, the spleen does not treat damp. Moving qi does, right? It's just, any case, the triple heater, and why the Sanjiao? If you don't mind, I get confused when I say triple heater. So the Sanjiao, right? And I love the Sanjiao. I personally think it is the best organ. I want to teach a seminar on treating the Sanjiao. The Sanjiao for all illnesses. Bai Bing Yong Sanjiao Zhi. Something like that, right? The 100 illnesses treated by Sanjiao. Something totally cool. And then I get to drop the big bomb. There's no such thing, right? We have an entire organ which basically regulates all movement and in our torso, and therefore our organs, which doesn't exist. Which is what I'm telling you. Qi doesn't exist, and yet we're manipulating it all the time. There is no such thing as Sanjiao, and yet it is doing Sanjiao things all the time. And if we can get our head around this, that we can't treat the Sanjiao or the Sanjiao channel to make it do something. We can't treat the spleen channel to make the spleen do something. The spleen doesn't do anything. The Sanjiao doesn't exist. And yet, something is happening. It's qi. And they had to give it a name. Like, if the qi goes wrong this way, then the spleen goes wrong. But if we don't fix the qi, and we just went in and took the spleen and went and gave a spleen massage, like Filipino surgery, go inside and be like, their spleen's gonna be like, whoa, and they still have damp. It's not like the spleen goes, now I'm gonna do my job. The spleen doesn't do anything. It's the spleen's qi. The qi that's in charge of transformation, we give it a name called spleen qi, but then everyone starts treating the spleen. The spleen don't make a better. And this is why it's always a little rough when people don't do herbs, but then most people do herbs without thinking about it. The way you treat damp in herbalism, and they say, well, you treat the spleen. No. You got to figure out, do you need to give it warm, acrid flavors? Right? What kind of technique is that in tangible acupuncture? Or do you need to give it bitter? Right? What do you need to give so that its qi changes and the spleen can go back to its function? But remember, the spleen doesn't actually do anything. It's its qi that does. And so the Sanjiao is the same way. We can do, as long as we shift the relationship between what's blocked, is the damp below, is the damp in the middle, is the damp and above, and then shift the flow of qi so that it's balanced up and down, strengthen what is too weak, weaken what is too strong and reckless, then, and I use points that happen to be on the Sanjiao channel, or I use Sanjiao language or spleen language, it'll get better. But the Sanjiao didn't fix the problem. The spleen didn't fix the problem. It was affecting the flow of qi that changed the pattern in the body so the disharmony went back to harmony. We create names to help us grasp something that is really ungraspable. The danger is we then start treating the name. And if we treat the name, sometimes they'll get better, but we'll never break 30, 40, or 50%. I mean, if we're constantly treating the spleen for damp, or the Sanjiao for spreading, and that's our thinking, so patient, Sanjiao, patient, spleen, we'll never get, I don't think anybody will get past the 5 out of 10 barrier, because they're treating something that doesn't actually exist. The spleen's physically there, but you take the spleen out, the spleen qi is still there. So obviously it's not the spleen. And then we can say, well, blah, blah, blah. But if we can just remind ourselves, we're affecting ebb and flow. We're trying to balance warm, cold, wind, dryness in the body. So what is too cold gets warmed. What is too warm gets cold. So someone needs, they have cold damp in the lower jiao, right? It's stuck in the lower jiao in the bottom. And I put my hands and I warm their lower jiao directly. What am I doing? Am I treating the lower jiao of the triple burner of the Sanjiao directly? as it happens to be that my hand is big enough so I happen to be touching the spleen channels? I mean, am I affecting the Mingmen so the Mingmen's fire is growing and chasing out the damp? Really, what I'm doing is I'm adding warmth and spreading so whatever damp there gets dissolved, moved away, and gone. That has nothing to do with the spleen or the triple burner. Does that make sense? We have to be guided by the theory and then remember that the theory is a construct to help us be able to work with something that we're not supposed to be able to fathom. That's Lao Tzu Dao De Jing. It's tough. Please.